No, I won't feed you anymore. You know what happens when I don't feed. The Offering was directed by Oliver Park, who did A Night of Horror, Nightmare Radio. This was written by two different people. Jonathan Younger, who's also in the movie as one of the focal characters, especially in the third act. And he executive produced movies such as The Protege. The Protege was really goddamn shit wasted. Every conceivable talented person, anybody that actually had any talent, in front of or behind the camera, any sound design people, anybody. The Protege was terrible. Unlike this movie that actually was good. It was more fully formed than Protege, but I've shat things out when I was sick that, well, were more fully formed than The Protege. And also written by Hank Hoffman in his feature credit. And there you go. It's two people coming together to write this story about Hebrew folklore, about a female demon whose history goes all the way back to the 1st century AD, not even next Sunday AD, that's known by many names from Near East and Europe and all regions around, and basically, despite the many names, is mostly known as the Taker of Children. So you're going to get a lot of fucked up shit going on here when you're dealing with a demon named the Taker of Children. This stars a few people. Nick Blood, not to be confused with Richard Blood, because that's Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. If you're a non-wrestling fan, you have no idea what I'm talking about. He plays Art, or Arthur. No, he is not like the PBS animated cartoon, nor is he... does he have an army of invisibles? More in the pity. And then we have Hamish, played by Paul Kaye, not Paul Kanye, because Paul Kaye actually seems to have his head on his goddamn shoulders, unlike Kanye. And Alan Corduner, hope I pronounced that right, he plays the character of Saul, and they better call him. Somebody does. Actually, he calls somebody, so it's mind-blowing. Saul better call somebody. That's the unofficial title of that series. It took place, I believe, before Breaking Bad. And also Emily Wiseman, who's Aussie. She plays Claire, and she senses something's going on in this weird, ancestral home that Art grew up in. She can almost sense things. She's clairvoyant. Yeah, everybody shut the review off right there. So there you go. I'm talking to nobody. So, yeah, it's based around Hebrew folklore. I know nothing about Hebrew folklore. Nothing. So since I'm not Hebrew, obviously, I know that's probably very shocking to everybody. This movie probably means a whole lot more to people that, have studied up on it or happen to be of Hebrew faith. I will say this did give me visions of The Vigil. The Vigil was more subtle in how it handled things. This was a little more out there with its haunted imagery and its, crazy nature and its atmosphere and all the weird tense music and ominous music, ominous music, and the bumps in the night. And I will say that while this movie doesn't necessarily reinvent the wheel, and there are cliches that this movie absolutely cannot get away from, but then again, it is hard to do a horror movie that really doesn't have any cliches. It's hard to do any movie really doesn't have any cliches because things can only be done so much. I mean, it's all been done, as the Bare Naked Ladies once said. But that being said, as far as positives, there are way more positives than negatives to this. In fact, I really did like this quite a bit. I'm not going to say it's a fantastic movie, but I'm going to say that Oliver Park and the writers and the crew involved, they did a pretty good job with this. This was haunting enough. This had elements of a great movie wrapped up in a pretty good movie. I mean, I'm going to absolutely encourage you guys check this out, as there was thought put into this, and you can sense that as far as honoring the Hebrew folklore, they did a pretty good job with that. Yes, when they have to show the haunted imagery, it's a little bit silly, especially one, a particular entity that I'll keep out until I get to the spoilers. And it is hard to root for a lot of the characters, in all honesty. Like, that's kind of one thing The Vigil has above this. You could root for the main guy in The Vigil. You can't really root for anybody here. People just pop in and out, do their kind of stuff. That's one of the only flaws this movie really has, besides the aforementioned cliches. But it ends up actually being rather haunting, a little bit entertaining. But it is very dark, and literally dark in some cases where you're not quite sure what the hell is going on. It does have that sense of family, though. I will give them that much credit as far as the cast. You feel like these people care for each other, even if some of them are just very one-dimensional. And then certain reveals happen where you're like figuring out, oh wow, this is why all this stuff's going on. This is why this particular entity is just latched on and is not letting go of this particular home and is going to haunt and infect and destroy everybody that gets inside its walls. So as far as, a movie that provides some good haunted imagery and some good atmospheric shots and some pretty good camera work, I do have to give props to the cinematography and the framing. Very well done. Again, cliches as far as bumps in the night, noises, and all that. Yeah, it can get a little bit tiring, but the movie has way more positives than negatives rather. And I will say that I did have an issue with the third act, and I'll say why in the spoilers, but I was like, sometimes I felt like it stumbled a little bit, unlike the Vigil, I think, that built up fine. The third act, bit of a stumbling block, even though I understand what they were trying to go for. But anyway, I am going to get into spoilers, just so you know. It's like about $8 on Amazon to rent. It's certainly worth it, at least in my opinion it is. It's certainly better than a lot of other indie offerings that just pop up on Amazon or any streaming services. So there you go. Anyway, we're going to get into spoilers. 3, 2, 1. It's on Amazon. Again, on Amazon. Spoilers. Okay, so Art has fallen on some bad financial times. Claire is pregnant. She does some freelance work, but she left her job recently because she's pregnant. Art does real estate, and he's been doing well, except he hasn't. He actually has been trying to make a secret deal to use his dad's house as collateral so he can save his house and save his business, because he hasn't sold a house in 2 years. Once this gets revealed, that kind of fractures the family, especially Hamish, played by Paul Kaye, who... basically he was telling him, like, you should be a smarter brother. You shouldn't do that. You shouldn't do that to our father. And the father also has his own funeral practice underneath, in the basement of the house. Now, there was earlier this older guy that did this ritual, and he ended up talking to this one girl that we find out later was named Sarah, who is a bit of a ghostly girl, and says, oh, you won't feed me. Well, you know what happens when I don't feed. A life for your wife. And then he decides, after making this circle, he gets this demon in him and seals it with a dagger, and he also has a weird pendant on him. While Art brings his wife, and they're integrating into the family, or at least she's integrating into the family, he's trying to, patch things up with his dad, butter him up, so to speak, as Hamish says. And they're going to do an autopsy on this guy. And he had this pendant on him. Well, this pendant kind of fell and shattered, and the pendant was actually holding the demon. That was a really, really stupid goddamn thing to shatter. Why'd you do that? He pushes it into the drain instead of saying, hey, I found this on here. What does it mean? Oh, shit, we're going to get possessed by demons here. Thanks a lot, son, you idiot. But then he takes the dagger out of the body. The dagger that was sealing the demon in there. That's something that you always make sure to do. Obviously, this old man is dead, but the spirit is going to keep him very much alive. Just long enough to bust right on out of him. And then the Chayam, I believe, is the character. I believe it was played by Jonathan Younger. He's telling Saul, don't worry, as long as you didn't find a pendant, then don't worry, the demon can't escape. The demon can't escape as long as the dagger's there and the pendant's there. It's okay as long as these two things are fine. And then they aren't. And then things just tumble down more and more and more. Claire starts to see this little girl that's haunting her. And this old guy that passed away was just doing it because he wanted to see his wife again. He wanted to bring his wife back from the dead or something, to that effect. When you suffer loss, you will do anything. And then the father passes away, but not before signing the contract to use his house as collateral to help his son. The dad passes away because this weird goat-like creature, yes, that's what it is, this giant goat-like creature, this demon, that's a female demon for some reason, it attacks Saul, and basically he either dies of fright or he just kills him by choking him. It's really hard to tell, but he makes it look like an accident. And then Sarah is haunting Claire. She's like saying, help me, Spock, help me. So Claire's doing all this while pregnant, and Art is kind of losing his goddamn mind because he's possessed, because he ends up seeing his dad's corpse, and then something weird happens. Now he's got a tourniquet on his goddamn arm. It's like he's doing something weird. He's going to prepare himself. He's carving symbols on the floor because all this weird shit's going on. And then he ends up going to this, the old man's, Yosel or something like that. I forget the guy's name. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce it right. The old man left recordings, basically. It's a trickster, it's a shapeshifter, it's an Abzu. I'm not actually sure. I think that's what the original title was supposed to be, according to IMDb. Again, I'm not familiar with Hebrew folklore. So, the old lady, or the old man's wife, arrives. Clearly the demon, and she's all creepy towards Claire. Claire helps her. Claire had earlier had a dream where she had been really, really, frightening. And then she woke up and there was a shot of blood on the sheets. So she's infected, and that's what this Ada woman says. You have to burn this pendant. And she burns the pendant, which frees the demon. So now the demon's out, except Ida was a demon. So this is where the movie starts to not make sense. Frees the demon there. Okay. Gets a little bit odd here. And then the house starts coming down, or at least pieces of it do. Now Art has to basically find a way to save his wife. And Sarah basically says, well, you can't carry her out. You can't carry her out of the house, a life for a life. You either kill yourself, or you find a way to give me the baby. No, I won't give you the baby. Give the baby. And then he basically calls a couple friends, Hamish, even though they were at odds, and that Chaim guy, Jonathan Younger. And you gotta stay in the circle and you'll be totally fine. Well, guess what Art doesn't do? He doesn't stay in the circle. So there you go. He ends up saving his wife. He ends up, trying to find the dagger to stab himself. But Hamish was dragged away just before. Then Hamish shows up and says, you should have stayed in the circle. So now he's infected. And everybody seemingly is dead. Except then Claire wakes up from a dream under the table when she fell asleep while Ada was trying to target her. And then Art sees her. And oh my God, everything's fine. It's a dream sequence. It's like the end of Dallas. It was all a dream. The series Dallas, not the city Dallas. That would be weird. But then, how's the baby? What do you mean? It's like, and then suddenly the demon shows up and we fade to black. The movie kind of just limps along and falls on its ass in the third act, when it actually had a pretty good build. And in fact, that's really the only detriment that I enjoyed the movie, don't get me wrong, and I'm going to give it a B+ because it had a lot of good stuff to it. It nearly stuck the landing. And then like Carrie's shrug, it snapped its leg. Man, I was like 15 years old when that happened. So anyway, it was certainly something. I'm not going to say it was a bad movie. It's worth checking out. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Like, share, subscribe, Twitter handle in the description. I'm John Recklin. I'll see you soon.